It started with a whisper. Not the kind you hear in the quiet of the night, but the kind that lingers in the back of your mind, gnawing at your thoughts. The kind that makes you question everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and the person lying next to you. This is my story, a story of lust, betrayal, and the moments that shattered my world. My name is Clara, and for years, I thought I had it all. A loving husband, a beautiful penthouse overlooking the city skyline, and a life that felt like it was plucked straight out of a romance novel. The kind of life people dream about. But sometimes, the most beautiful stories hide the darkest secrets. And mine was no exception. Daniel and I had been married for 7 years. 7 years of shared laughter, quiet mornings, and stolen kisses in the kitchen. He was a successful architect, and I worked as a freelance writer. Our life was perfect, or so I thought. Our penthouse was my sanctuary. Floor-to-ceiling windows let the sunlight pour in every morning, casting golden hues across the polished wooden floors. I'd sit by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the city come alive, while Daniel worked late into the night on his projects. He was charming, attentive, and always knew how to make me feel special. He'd leave little notes on the kitchen counter. "Good morning, beautiful," or surprise me with a dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant. But lately, something felt off. It was the little things. The way he'd glance at his phone and quickly lock it when I walked into the room. The late nights at the office, the whispered phone calls in the hallway. At first, I told myself I was overthinking. After all, Daniel loved me, didn't he? But then, one night, I noticed something. A faint smudge of lipstick on his collar, a shade I didn't own. When I asked him about it, he laughed it off. "Must have been from that client meeting," he said. "You know how those corporate types are." I wanted to believe him, but deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The signs kept coming. Subtle at first, but impossible to ignore. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps. Daniel wasn't in bed. I found him in the living room, his back turned to me, speaking in a hushed voice. "I miss you too," he said. My heart stopped. I stood there, frozen, as he whispered words that weren't meant for me. When he finally noticed me, he quickly ended the call and smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just work," he said. "You know how it is." But I didn't know. And that's when the doubt began to creep in. The next morning, I decided to check his phone. I know, it was wrong. But I had to know the truth. The screen lit up with a notification from Emily. "Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." My hands trembled as I read the message. Emily. The name echoed in my mind, over and over like a broken record. I confronted him that evening. His face paled when I mentioned her name. "She's just a colleague," he said. "We've been working on a project together." But I could see it in his eyes. The guilt, the fear, the lies. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for me, his hands warm against my skin, his lips brushing against my ear. "I love you, Clara," he whispered. "You're the only one I want." And for a moment, I believed him. But then I remembered the way he looked at her, the way he touched her, and I pulled away. The signs kept piling up. The faint scent of perfume on his collar, a scent that wasn't mine. The way he'd come home late, his tie slightly undone, his lips curved into a secretive smile. One evening, I decided to follow him. He said he was working late, but something in my gut told me otherwise. I waited outside his office building, my heart pounding as I watched him walk out. Not alone, but with her. She was beautiful, with long auburn hair and a laugh that echoed through the empty street. They walked to a nearby bar, their hands brushing against each other, their bodies leaning in too close. I wanted to scream, to confront them right then and there, but I couldn't move. Instead, I went home and cried until my tears stained the pillowcase, until the ache in my chest felt like it would never go away. The next day, I confronted him again. This time, I didn't hold back. "I saw you with her," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "How could you do this to me?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret, maybe, or guilt. "It's not what you think," he said. "She's just a friend." But I knew better. I could see it in his eyes, the way he hesitated, the way he couldn't meet my gaze. "I love you, Clara," he said again. "You're the only one I want." But this time his words felt hollow, empty, like a broken promise.